thought I would talk a little bit about myself and about this channel to give you an idea of what this is all about. This is actually take 2 of the video because a lot of things have changed since the original one I made. This is kind of a long video and it's not silly like my videos normally are, but I hope that you'll stick through it. First, I'll introduce myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about my goals with this channel, and then I will talk about my history and experience with martial arts. So first, I go by Siva. I'm in my 30s. I live in Southern California with my husband and 2 mini cats. I am a geek and a nerd, and in case you couldn't tell by the fact that the channel mascot is a T-Rex with a knife, I'm pretty silly. I work for a video game media company, which is awesome because I love video games. And lastly, I am a practitioner of the Filipino martial arts. So as far as this channel goes, the reason I originally made this channel was to sort of share and document my experiences at various classes and seminars and share that. But I've actually backed away from that a lot because, well, first off, I'm not an instructor in most of the arts that I'm taking seminars and classes on. And also, this material is the intellectual property of some people, and in many cases, it's their literal livelihood. And I don't want to be disrespectful to any of those instructors who have been generous enough to share their wisdom with me and other people. So right now, this channel has ended up being mostly like vlogs of my experiences and in discussion of generalized ideas and concepts. I may share occasional like common drills and really basic stuff, but that's not going to be the standard. So about my martial arts. Well, I've been doing martial arts for about 6 years total, so I'm still very new at this. I especially feel that way surrounded by people who've been doing it for decades. So I do Filipino martial arts. As I said, there's a million different schools of Filipino martial arts. I study primarily in Santo La Costa, Dog Brothers, and a little bit of Balintawak, Cabaron, Bahalana, Bikini Tercia, a little bit of stuff here and there, and I attend seminars in other styles as much as I can, recently Illustrismo and Cabaron. So yeah, I like it all. So my very first teacher ever in FMAs was primarily a Sayak and Dosi Pares guy, as well as an Inasanto instructor. My current instructor is also an Inasanto instructor, but he's also a full dog brother, an instructor in DBMA, an instructor in Balintawak, and a million other non-Filipino martial arts. I'm an instructor under my current instructor, and I'm also a very, very recent instructor under Guru Dan Inasanto. I am the lowest rank instructor. I'm brand new, so don't take me as an expert or an authority on anything, because I'm not. I identify much more heavily with people who are new to martial arts than I do with longtime practitioners, much less other instructors. It's actually somewhat surprising to me that I ended up being an instructor because, aside from the fact that I still feel new and that I'm learning everything, I'm actually a really, really shy person in real life. And so it's safe to say that teaching was never really a calling that I had. And I know that being shy as an adult is stupid, but my brain doesn't like following the rules. For a while, my husband and I did teach a class 1 night a week at our Instructor School. Lately, we've sort of morphed it more into like a training group, so it's more egalitarian and we're all learning and teaching each other and sharing and growing together, which is much more my style. Our group focuses on practical application, FMA, and sparring, which means that we do a lot of Dog Brothers material, but to be clear, we are not an official Dog Brothers group. Neither of us are DBMA instructors. Before I started FMA, I had no background in martial arts at all. In fact, I've spent my life being the uncoordinated nerd who prefers reading and video games to doing anything physical. But nevertheless, I got into martial arts for 2 reasons. So the first reason was because I wanted a physical activity that wasn't just working out, because I find that really, really, really boring. Something being boring is sort of the biggest motivation killer to me ever. I spend the entire time like obsessing over more productive or more fun things that I could be doing. So I really wanted an activity that was an activity I enjoyed on its own and not a means to an end, and that I would look forward to. And so that means things like rocking out at the roller rink or going on beautiful hikes or sparring with training swords. So the second reason I got into martial arts is a little more complicated. It was actually because of a book. The book was called On the Warrior's Path, Fighting, Philosophy, and Martial Arts Mythology by Daniel Bolelli. About a decade ago, I crossed this book in a bookstore, and I was really surprised because the author was one of my professors at university. And in fact, I had really enjoyed him in his class. It was on a totally different subject than martial arts. So I absolutely loved the book, and that's what inspired me to become involved in martial arts. I will leave a link in the description box to the video I made entirely about that book, as well as a link to the book itself if you want to check it out. So to be clear, On the Warrior's Path is not actually about the FMAs. In fact, the FMAs are only mentioned in passing within the book. So what about it attracted me to the Filipino martial arts? Well, a lot of reasons, but what drew me in is in the very back of the book, there's a chapter where Professor Bolelli describes different martial arts based on their common characteristics, just very basic generalizations. But there were a lot of things in the little tiny paragraph on the Filipino martial arts that really spoke to me. One, it's primarily a weapons-based art. Of course, there's lots of empty-handed stuff in Filipino martial arts, but it is a very weapons-heavy system. This appeals to me because I feel like having a force multiplier as a woman sort of levels the playing field a little bit more than empty-handed stuff. I mean, no matter how much I train, I'm never going to punch as hard as a dude. And also, I gotta admit, sparring with swords is kind of cool, right? Two, it tends to be more realistic. Knives are very common, sticks are very common, blunt impact weapons are very common. There's a big emphasis on improvised weaponry, and the different motions transfer between one configuration to the next with very minimal adjustment. So this gives it a very good potential for realism. That's not to say that there are not flashy maneuvers that are more fancy than functional in the FMAs. There definitely are, but it does have a lot of stuff that I do feel is more realistic and more practical. Nor am I saying that the FMAs are exclusive in offering realistic material. I just think they do it well, and that was a feature that appealed to me. Third, it's very sparring heavy, or at least it has a very big emphasis on training with a partner. Obviously, this is going to vary a lot depending on what sub-style you train in and who you train with. And even then, there's a huge divide between cooperative training with a partner and full contact stick fighting with the Dog Brothers, right? And to be clear, I'm not saying that practicing solo forms in the air on a dummy is a bad thing. It can give you a lot of really great attributes, but that wasn't something that appealed to me because I think it's slightly less realistic, and more importantly, when you're training with another person, it's a lot more engaging and therefore less boring. So consequently, because of that, when I sought out classes, I dragged my husband along as a training buddy. He also had no martial arts background before we started, but he also fell in love with the FMAs. And in fact, as of the time of recording this, I think he's fought in 6 Dog Brothers gatherings in 2 different countries. So, he's pretty hooked too. And next year, I think we're thinking about going to Europe for another gathering. So my final point is something very important to me, and I want to be really clear about it. Even though I only train in the Filipino martial arts, I am not one of those people that thinks that, my particular art is the best art or the one way or the correct way or anything like that. I train in the FMAs because given my finite amount of time, I feel like I really need to focus on one particular art if I want to have any chance of being decent at it, rather than training in a bunch of different arts and becoming mediocre at all of them. I'm not saying that if you do that, you're going to be mediocre in a lot of arts. Many people, my instructor included, can train in lots and lots of arts and be good at all of them. In fact, they can take things that they learn in one art and use that to help them learn the other art better. But going back to the thing where I'm an uncoordinated geek, this stuff is really hard for me. It's really hard for me. It takes me a lot of time and focus and energy to learn this stuff and to become somewhat competent at it. So I really need to dedicate a lot of time to learning this. And since I have a limited amount of time, I really can only afford to put that in one place, and I have chosen the FMAs, and so that's where I put it. But I definitely am not a person who thinks that the FMAs are the best martial art. And I think if it is important to you to be a good fighter, you should cross-train in a lot of things, and you should take the things that work for you, and you should get rid of the things that don't work for you. If you have the time and skill to do that, and that's something you care about, that's definitely the approach you should take. And it's also worth noting that not everyone wants the same thing out of martial arts. If you're doing martial arts for fitness, you're probably just fine doing kickboxing or whatever. Or if you're more into the internal meditation or philosophy, you might be happy with just Tai Chi, right? Not everybody does martial arts because they want to be the best fighter or the best martial artist. That's not everyone's end game. I don't know what my end game is, but I'm having a fun time along the way. So thank you guys for watching and sticking through this whole long video. I hope it gave you some insight into me and this channel. And if any of this sounds interesting to you, I would encourage you to subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions or just want to share your story about how you got into martial arts, please leave a comment because that's interesting to me. So thank you again for watching, guys.